Links to previous episodes are given in the video description, so don't forget to like, subscribe and share the video. The Alpha's Arcane Bride. Episode 2. Chapter 10. Dulsanra, why? Just why did he have to come here to my workplace? Last night I hadn't been able to sleep. All I could do was replay everything he said and did. I hated how he confused me, or the way my heart reacted to him. I knew there were rare cases where witches and werewolves had been mated. Most ended in the witch being used and rejected. The very thought made me sick. I had actually thought he'd leave, and not just come back to annoy me. I think it was time to leave. My heart clenched at the thought. Great. Just great, one more person to run from. The way he had attacked the man next to him, the anger I had seen in his eyes. I shuddered. I hated werewolves, I had been a punch bag for them for long enough. Even after I ran away from Lily and Alfred's cottage, I had run into more trouble. Werewolves. When they found out I was a witch, I pushed the memories away. The pain of those memories was crippling me. They had used me for entertainment, as their personal target practice. That month had been one of the darkest moments of my life. I often wondered which part of my life was the worst. The warden, Andorra, or the werewolves. Anna? All okay, love? Gwen's voice came from behind me. I looked up, realizing I had spaced out. Yeah, of course. Are you sure? You just stormed away from that group. Did they do something? They aren't ready to order yet. I whispered quietly. Oh great, now I sounded like a weak, scared girl. I forced a smile. I'm okay, seriously. I just need to speak to Colleen. Oh, are you sure you're okay? If it's those boys, do you want me to go speak to them? You're a beautiful girl, love, of course they're all going to try to chat with you. Don't take any notice of them. I got back to work, attending to the other two regulars who had come in. I didn't miss one of the shifter women walking over to the counter to place their orders. Did I feel a little bad about not serving them? Not really. Looking beautiful, Snow. Old Jack said when I placed his hot, steaming mug of tea in front of him. Thank you, you look very handsome yourself. I replied with a small smile. Jack had lost his wife a few years ago, and since then I heard from the others that he always came here, saying the tea and apple pie made by our cook Macy was the closest to his wife's. Thank you, I do think so myself. It's the shave, he said, patting his cheek. Oh, I think so too. You suit it. I'm glad you got it trimmed. How are the aches and pains? I asked as I sliced the apple pie for him. Jack had a neurological disorder that made him shake excessively. Some days it wasn't as bad, but on others, it was worse. When I first started working here, I saw him struggle to slice the pie. When I asked Axel why no one helped him, he said they didn't want to offend him. So, I had taken it upon myself to help. I didn't mind him getting angry at me as long as it helped him. He had complained a little, but I had simply sliced it and walked away. It was now a silent agreement between us. He didn't complain nor thank me, and it worked. Oh, you know the same, although this weather isn't helping. He grumbled. I smiled, as I placed the knife down and passed him his fork. "Well, just make sure you're bundled up when you step out," I said. "Oh, I always do, Snow. I always do." He picked up his fork and I realized this was probably the last time I'll see him. I was leaving. I could feel the alpha's eyes on me. His piercing gaze fixed on me as I disappeared into the back. I looked at my arm. Although the sleeve was covering it, his number remained. I don't know why I hadn't wiped it off, but neither had I written it down. Bad mistake, Del. Do it now. I walked to the sink, pulling my sleeve up and applying a bit of hand wash as I rubbed the ink off, my stomach twisting with a sliver of guilt. I hated this feeling, but like every other mark on my body, the ghostly imprint wasn't vanishing. I hated this. I hated the fact that I didn't remove it last night. I examined the faint imprint of the words before grabbing the metal scrubber sponge and scrubbing at my arm more vigorously. Just leave me alone. Walk out of my life. Why did you have to show up? Anna! Donovan shouted, snapping me back to reality. Whoa, girl! He grabbed my arm. I looked at the scratches I had made with the wiry sponge. I had drawn blood. I yanked my arm free, pulling my sleeve down. Don't. I just. Girl, those metal sponges are for pots and pans. Are you crazy using that on yourself? He looked aghast. He was another one of the workers here. I shook my head and walked out. I didn't want to talk to him. I almost bumped into Colleen, who had just been about to enter the back. I was going to ask where you gone. Jane's struggling to man the tables. Go help. I don't want you lazing on the job. She frowned. Sorry, I just had to wash something. Colleen, I want to talk to you tables. Colleen cut in. We'll talk later. I sighed and nodded, grabbing the next tray. Table 6. Gwen said, with a sympathetic look. I frowned, looking at the table in the corner. Were they seriously still here? I had seen Jane serve them before. I guess they were animals and could eat a lot. Okay, I was being a bit unfair. If I had the money, I'd love to eat a lot. But I need to save what I can to get out of here. I walked over, only for the alpha. I refused to call him by name. We were not acquaintances, after all, to be watching me, and I didn't like the look in his eyes. It was one I had seen before. Pure carnal desire. I balanced the tray on one arm, placing their drinks and an extra plate of donuts on the table. Can I get you anything else? I asked quietly, not meeting any of their gazes. No, thank you. The blonde girl said gently. Thanks. The brunette responded. I just gave a small nod and walked away. 2 hours had passed, and they were still there. I had decided to ignore them. With so many people around, he wouldn't pull something in front of everyone. It was just as I was walking into the back for my 15-minute break that Colleen pulled me to the side. What did you want to talk about? You look a bit lost today. I need to leave the city. So, I was wondering if I could get my pay tonight. I asked quietly. No. No, girl, you are not quitting on me without a notice. Colleen snapped with irritation. Not the way I was expecting this to go, no. You do know that Axel is on leave too. she snapped. It's an emergency, Colleen. I pleaded quietly as Jane pushed the doors open, holding a pile of dirty dishes. Anna, can you clean up Jack's table? He's spilled half the tea. She rolled her eyes. A flash of irritation flitted through me, and I clenched my jaw at her attitude towards Jack. I didn't have the time to argue with Colleen and just walked out with a cloth and spray. Get me another mug of tea for Jack, I said to Gwen before I walked over to the table. I knew why he hadn't left. The sudden downpour had been ongoing for nearly 2 hours and he was just sitting here with his newspaper. He usually walked it here. "Ah Snow, it's you again. I am beginning to annoy everyone here too," he mumbled, making my heart ache. "No, you're not," I said firmly, as I wiped the table and gave him a small smile. "I love to see your handsome face every day. Now the next cup is on me, I'll bring it right over." I winked at him as I turned away and knocked into someone gasping when he caught me by the waist. I didn't need to see his face to know who it was. The Alpha. The tingles I felt at his touch irritated me, along with the way my heart raced. His seductive scent filled my nose. "Easy there, kitten." His husky, deep voice came. I pulled away, glaring at him. "Relax, I don't bite. Unless, of course, you want me to." He gave me one of those killer smirks, and I almost fell for its charm. Almost before I could reply, someone I wanted to see even less than the Alpha before me, now stepped into the diner. "In my office, Anna." Horace's disgusting voice came. "No. Please not now. Why did keep getting worse?" "I'm working," I replied. "I can see what kind of work you're doing, Anna," Horace said, his gaze looking over Rayhan. This wasn't good, I could sense his anger growing. "Okay, coming." "Excuse me," I said politely to him before walking past and through to the back. I didn't trust Horace, but there wasn't much he could do when people were around, and on top of that, I was sure he was just going to try to get me to agree again. I think I was just going to leave without my pay then. I've had enough. I stopped at the door to the office, staying clear as he unlocked it and stepped inside. I followed slowly. "Close the door." He waved his hand, and I did as he said. Not moving from my spot as he took his seat behind the small desk. It was a mess in here, he rarely used it and the paperwork and stuff that Colleen managed were set in piles. It was more of her office than Horace's. "Did you think over my offer?" he asked, loosening his tie as he stared at me. "No, because I had already made my decision. Today is my last day here," I said firmly. "Are you being serious? You know, I can offer you so much more." No thank you, Horace. "I'm quitting. You will lose the entire month's pay for not giving us notice," he added snidely as I turned away. "I don't care." I turned and stormed out, not waiting for a reply. "He can go himself." Horace had left in a bad mood after that, shouting at literally everyone before he stormed out. Colleen's mood was worse, and she was asking me what I did to annoy him off. I wish I just told her, but I didn't want more attention brought upon me. I was done. Rayno, the Alpha, left an hour after Horace. Even then, I was sure it was because of his friends making him leave. I didn't miss his gaze on me when he left. He had tried to approach me a few times, but I had evaded him each time. I'll pack tonight and head to the train station. I finished the tables and wished Colleen would just give me my pay for the last few weeks. She saw me watching and shook her head. No girl, I want you back here tomorrow and for the rest of the month. I'm not anyone's servant to be ordered around. I simply nodded. Carry on wishing, I'm out of here. I went to my locker, grabbed my jacket, and slipped it on, looking at the light stain of blood on my sleeve thanks to my excessive scrubbing earlier. I cast one final glance around. I had grown attached to all these humans. Donovan was taking off his rubber gloves. Gwen, who was sitting looking through her phone, most likely waiting for her husband to come to pick her up. Jane was changing into something else. She was the type who went out with some guy or her friends every night. Plus, tomorrow was her day off. Macy was making a note of the supplies that we would need for Monday. I felt guilty knowing I was going to cause a dilemma here by leaving, but I had to. Goodbye everyone. Once again, I was running away from more relationships that I had just about built. This is why I will forever be alone. Bye guys. I called, giving them a small wave. See you tomorrow, girl. Donovan said, giving me a wave. Yes. I need you to help me with the pies in the morning. Macy called. Okay, sure thing. Sorry guys. I stepped out and shoved my hands into the pockets of my jacket. The bitter cold was sinking into my bones. I kept my head down, my eyes stinging from the cold. I had just rounded the corner when a car slowed next to me. I looked at it sharply as the window rolled down to reveal none other than Horace. He stopped the car and got out. Oh please not again. I'll drop you home. It's dangerous for a young woman to be out at this time. I think it would be more dangerous for me to go with you. Off Horace. I snapped. I no longer worked for him. I was not going to be patient and take his shit. I watch it, girl. Now get in the car, I said no. I turned to walk off when he grabbed my arm, but before he could yank me towards the car, or I could even react, I heard a menacing growl from behind us. My stomach fluttered, as Horace was yanked off me and slammed into his car. I winced at the huge dent in the car as Horace grunted. Touch my girl again and I'll destroy you. It felt strange to see someone actually defending me. Maybe I'll just pretend I didn't hear the my girl part. Because I wasn't his. I turned and ran off. Anna. You will regret this. You have nothing. Do you really think you can? Horace's words became howls of pain and I didn't dare look back as I ran. I didn't want to see the ugly side of the werewolf. It would only bring dark memories back. I'll grab my stash of cash and then I'm leaving this place. I reached home breathless. I put the key in the door, pausing. Why was it unlocked? My heart was thudding in my chest as I pushed the door open, flipping the light switch on only to freeze and scan the room. Nothing looked out of place, almost. On a second look, I could see things had been moved. My heart was pounding as I scurried to the bed, pushing it away from the wall and falling to my knees. Please be there. With my luck, what if? Panic filled me, and I quickly pried the loose board up. My stomach plummeted. Where there should have been a pouch of money, there was a simple square of paper. If you want your money back, doll, you know where to find me. I placed my head in my hands, twisting my fingers into my hair. Despair and disappointment filled me. Why me? Rayhan! I let him fall to the floor, almost unconscious, with blood dripping from his nose. I wanted to kill him. I kicked him hard in his stomach. I stepped back. My mate had a miserable life and it was destroying me. Wasn't this sleazebag meant to be her boss? What a face! From the moment this prick called her to his office, I knew something was up. I had followed and listened to the conversation, but she had handled it well. The others had said I needed to leave. Although they had witnessed everything, they didn't question it, and I was grateful for that. I knew I'd have to be more open about it, but now wasn't the time. I stayed behind to keep a watch on her from across the street as she worked. I now crouched down, grabbing this face by his collar. He was already out of it, but I slammed him against the car. Touch my girl again and I swear I will kill you. I didn't care if he heard or not, the bastard has been warned. I stood up and walked away. I knew she had probably run home, and although she probably didn't want to see me, I needed to see her. The door to her place was open and I was about to knock, only to see she had moved the bed and was sitting behind it, her head in her hands. I stepped inside, the floor creaking under my feet. She didn't move as I walked over to her. I was about to speak when I saw the note that lay on top of the lifted floorboard. I read it, irritation filling me at the message. She had called the dirtbag Horace, right? Although I wanted to pull her into my arms and tell her I'm there for her, I knew it was not what she would want. So I walked out without a word, shutting the door behind me. I was going to get her savings back. Had he really stooped so low to try to blackmail her with her own money? I walked back to where I had left him on that side road several minutes earlier. It seemed like he had regained consciousness. He was trying to make a call, his broken arm not doing much to help him. Where's her money? I growled. He squeaked, dropping his phone as he clambered back against the car. Fear rolling off him in waves. I in the dashboard. He trembled, flinching when I raised my fist. I smashed it through the car window, making him cry out even more. It was unlocked. Why? He gulped when I glared at him and took out the pouch that held her scent. Interest. I growled. Bending down, I searched his pocket and took out his wallet. He only watched, terrified. I took out any cash he had and walked off, slipping it into her pale pink pouch. Now to get back to her, but before that, I needed to make a quick stop. 20 minutes later, I was knocking on her door, her pouch tucked into my jacket as I held 2 cups of coffee. Rain was pouring down and I was getting soaked. She didn't open the door, so I knocked again. I tried the door handle but it was locked. Dulsanra. I know you're in there. Open up, please. No reply. Come on kitten, I'm getting drenched out here. No one told you to come here. Came here clipped reply. She was brutal. I've brought coffee. I said, using my most suggestive voice. None of my charms worked on this woman. I looked at the rain that was pouring down. Maybe I needed to give her space. Okay, fine. I'll leave the coffee and your pouch right here on the doorstep. Just pick it up, okay? No reply. I sighed. I wanted to tell her I was worried, but heck, how could I just push my way in? I bent down to place the cup down when the door opened. She stood there, arms crossed, a pout on those kissable lips of hers. She stepped back and I smirked. There was my permission to enter. I'm only repaying you for last night's coffee, I said as she closed the door and locked it. I placed the cups down, brushing my wet hair off my face, only for her to hold out a towel. She was refusing to look at me, but her racing heart was giving her away. Whether she liked it or not, I had an effect on her. I toweled my hair dry and took my jacket off. Thanks, I said, putting the towel down. I took the pouch and held it out. With interest from the prick, I said. She frowned. I don't want the interest. Well, then accept it as this month's pay, since you wanted to quit, I said, running my fingers through my wet curls. She froze and I gave her a small smile. We have good hearing, kitten, and your manager wasn't really quiet, I explained. Oh, thank you for the pouch, but don't think it will earn you any points. I still want you gone, she said, picking up the 2 coffee cups. I didn't say anything. I believed in the bond between us. She held one out to me and I took it slowly, letting my fingers brush hers. The sparks felt so perfect. She almost dropped the cup, but I had a firm hold on it, smirking slightly. A small stain of blood on her sleeve captured my attention. I grabbed her hand, placing the cup down with the other and pushing her sleeve up. What the? My stomach sank as I stared at her arm. The scratches were exactly where I had written my number. This was not a coincidence. She pulled free, slipping her sleeve down. Do you really hate me that much? I asked, no longer in the mood for coffee. Yes. There was no hesitation in her voice. Looking at you makes me remember every single mutt that abused me, laughed at me, and humiliated me. Her voice was barely above a whisper, but the pain in it was palpable. Our eyes met, my grey meeting her startling blue ones. The pain, sadness, and anguish that haunted hers were not something I could forget. At least let me change that perspective for you, I whispered. I doubt you can. Want to see? She asked suddenly. See your memory? Yeah, I can show you a little, give you an idea of why I hate your kind, she said. My powers were sealed away by Endora. I have yet to find out how to unlock them, but I can probably show you a little. I nodded. I wasn't expecting this. Was I ready? I had to be if I wanted to even comprehend the level of what she had been through. Allow me to get the spell ready then. She sipped her coffee and then placed it down as she went to one of her boxes and removed a few jars. Her intoxicating scent was so welcoming, I knew I could never live without it. I had only known her for 24 hours, but she was already a part of me. The road ahead was going to be long. I watched her draw some symbols on the ground with the powdered herbs. She then placed some crystals down and took out a few candles. I had never really seen a witch do a spell, it was kind of interesting. I don't know if it was because it was her, but watching her sprinkle the powers and light those candles, the glow warming her face was just beautiful. How could anyone call her darkness? She looked up as she shielded the candle, placing it in the center gently, giving me an eye full of her cleavage. Goddess, she was a tease, and clearly didn't even realize she was one. She leaned forward further and I felt pleasure rush south, my eyes flashing as I imagined her under me. I looked away, exhaling deeply. What is it? Nothing. I lied. She looked at me suspiciously. My powers may be sealed away, but us witches sense a lot. You're nervous. Are you scared about what you might see? No, that definitely was not the reason why I was nervous. I was scared to know what she had been through, but I wanted to know so I could understand her better. No, I want to know. She didn't reply and finally stood up. I wondered what made her agree to open up, even if it was just a little. Was she opening up to me? Can I ask why you're sharing this with me? I mean, you want me to understand why you hate my kind but don't go getting the wrong idea. She interrupted. I see the way you look at me, you say I'm your mate, and I know you're not lying. Maybe this is some sick form of punishment from the gods for some past crime I must have committed, that or they are simply enjoying the show. You're not a believer, I said. I could feel her pain, her eyes dulling as she got lost in her memories. Tell me, Alpha, can you believe in the gods when all they have done is watch you suffer? My birth was a curse, my life was torture, they didn't even let me die. So why should I place my faith and believe in them? I could feel her pain, I wish I could take it all away. Maybe we were paired to show the world, we are not enemies. Maybe we were mated so I could heal you, to always protect you. I reached out and took her hand, pulling her close. For a moment I thought she'd pull away, but it seemed she was having a hard time struggling with her emotions. Our eyes met and the feelings swirled around us. Two opposites that were trying to understand what this was. Her heart was thundering as she looked down at me, and although I wanted to wrap my arms around her, I didn't want to push her away. Settling for taking both her hands, I ran my thumb in circular motions on the back of her palms. I will always take care of you, kitten. I'd never let anyone hurt you. False promises. She whispered, I cannot accept you. She pulled away, taking a deep breath. Her hands were pressed against her thighs. Okay, let's do this. Why do you need all of that? Strong witches can cast spells without it, right? I asked. Yes, but like I said, my powers are sealed, right now I am weak. Step into the circle and make sure your big feet don't touch anything. I stood up, it was pretty small. I'm a big guy, I winked suggestively at her but she simply rolled her eyes. You could have made it bigger, do you see space in here? Fair point. She picked up a knife and then, to my surprise, stepped into the circle too. She moved closer. Both of us were aware of the other's proximity. Her chest was only an inch from mine, if that. She looked at the knife and then at me, hesitation clear in her eyes. She wanted to ask me something that was clear. What is it? Hold me. I was surprised at that, not missing her cheeks tinging pink. Now that I could do, any time, any day. I gripped her tiny waist, not missing the way her heart was racing as she leaned back, trying to bring the knife between us. I held her weight, her leg between mine as we stood in this tiny circle. She closed her eyes, whispering a quick spell. The powder she had sprinkled began moving ever so slightly, the candles flickering in a wind that was not present. She sliced her palm, reaching out and letting the drops of blood fall into the circle. Whispering filled the room, and I felt a sudden chill, then suddenly I was in a room full of smoke. Lights hung on low beams. The smell of sweat and alcohol was strong. The sound of men jeering and joking as they sat around with beer. What was this? Even the direction of my gaze wasn't my own, my eyes darting around the room. Wait, this was Dulsanra's memory. Which meant I was looking at it through her eyes. So, who's up next? Her heart was thundering as she looked down, and my blood ran cold. She was covered in blood. My stomach twisted as I saw the small knives that were lodged in her thighs, stomach, and shoulder. She tugged at her wrists that were bound fruitlessly. She was tied up against a wall, her arms spread wide. Blistering anger surged through me. "I'll look at little witchy trying to escape." "Allow me," one of the men said, standing up. He was a werewolf, I knew that much. He picked up 2 knives and threw one at her. She flinched as the knife hit her shoulder right next to the other one. I felt useless. My head was pounding with the uncontrollable rage I was feeling as I watched her suffering through her eyes. "This is pretty fun. Let's carve her up a little more," another said. 2 more knives, her eyes blurred with tears and her heart was thundering. "She's pretty hot. If only she wasn't a witch, I wouldn't mind some of that." The first man spoke. Coming over, he grabbed her face, spitting at her. A small whimper left her lips as the man punched her straight in the face. "Stop!" I growled. Never have I felt like this. All I could see was red, and the urge to kill was tempting me. I heard a gasp and I was back in her room. She stumbled, her eyes wide with horror as she looked at me. My claws were out, my eyes burning green. "Who were they?" I asked dangerously. My aura rolled off of me in crashing waves as I glared ahead. I was going to find each one of those bastards, even if I had to scour the earth. I will kill them slowly and painfully. Each one of those bastards was going to pay for the pain they caused her. I swear by Selene herself. Dulsanra, I wanted him to realize that his kind were monsters, that I could never accept them. I wanted him to realize that and just leave me alone. But the effect this had. He was able to pull out of the memory before he had even seen the worst of it, and the anger that radiated from him made me stumble backwards. His eyes blazed green and his voice was terrifying. "Who were they?" I didn't know, but if I said that, would he take his anger out on me? I couldn't be so sure. Our eyes met and his returned to their usual gorgeous grey. He walked towards me, but I stepped back. I don't know who they were." I flinched when he raised his hands, only for my eyes to widen in surprise as he cupped my face. The rough pads of his fingers felt good against my cool skin. My heart skipped a beat when he looked down at me. The pain and anguish that I saw in his made my own eyes sting. I placed my hand on his chest, feeling his heart racing beneath my fingertips. Don't show your weakness. Why did he have this affect on me? He shook his head, unable to say anything when he closed his eyes, removing his hands from my face, and instead wrapped his arms around me. I gasped. My hands pressed between our chests, his strong arms around me tightly, his damp hair pressed against my cheek. Nothing I do will take away you have been through. But I swear I will make this world a better place for you. Please just give me a chance to prove myself. His words were soft, and thick with emotions, his scent was soothing, his arms around me felt so comforting. But he was a monster just like the rest, right? My mind wandered to Jo. She was a young werewolf. We had kind of been there for one another in the cells. Back then, I thought that perhaps some werewolves were good. But what I went through after I woke up from the coma. When those werewolves who had murdered Lily and Alfred first came. They had tortured all three of us, then killed Lily in front of Alfred. He had managed to distract them so I could run, but in the end, they had been able to capture me. That's when it all started, the mental torture, the trauma. They had humiliated me by stripping me bare, urinating on me, and beating me. They would cover my face with a cloth before dousing me with water. Their chilling laughs and disgusting comments still rang in my mind. I could go on, but it only made everything come back. I was trying to stay strong, but the memories made tears blur my eyes. No one should have gone through that. Why did the gods hate me? I couldn't stop the tears that streamed down my cheeks, a sob escaping my lips. No, I couldn't cry in front of him. He stroked the back of my hair and our bodies molded together as one. He was one of them. I tensed and pulled away suddenly. I couldn't accept him. Didn't he realize that just seeing him brought back those painful memories? So now you know. When I see you, all I remember is them. So please just leave. I whispered. I knew my words would hurt him. But I had no choice. A rejection, I needed to reject him, but would he accept it? There was one way to find out. Taking a deep breath, I looked him in the eye, noticing his thick black lashes. He really was beautiful. I looked down, trying to clear my head. Idolsanra Silver, reject you, Rehan Rossi, as my mate. I felt a painful tug inside. What was this? His eyes flew open in shock as he stepped back, knocking into one of the candles on the floor as he shook his head no. It was all he said, running his fingers through his hair. I could see the pain in his eyes. The hurt in them, why was it hurting me? No, he walked to the door and after unlocking it, left. The door shut behind him with a snap. I closed my eyes, covering my mouth with my hands as I slid down the wall, letting the tears flow. I was born to be alone, I will survive alone, and I will die alone. This was what I was destined for. I wrapped my arms around my knees as I cried silently. I hated the fact that I was weak, useless, and pathetic. Endora was dead, but she was still destroying my life. If I had my powers, I could protect myself, make everyone pay. But even in death, she had bound me. Only she had the answers to unseal me. I looked up suddenly, my heart thudding. I was a witch of darkness. One who could connect to the dead, I had spent time with the warden who had made me practice necromancy. Andorra was dead, but I could contact her to get the answers I needed. It was risky, but what's the worst that could happen? It could kill me, or she simply wouldn't give me the answers I needed. The chances for her to come back were low. After all, I wasn't strong enough to resurrect anyone in my current state. I looked at the destroyed circle. It was time to do another spell, but before that, I needed to pack. I stood up and wiped my tears away. Locking the door, I picked up my suitcase and my clothes. Swiftly, I began folding them into the suitcase. 30 minutes later I was done. I had all my essentials in there, my extra cash, and anything else of importance. I look around the now mostly empty room, wishing I could have stayed for longer. But that was no longer an option. Placing my final rent and the key in an envelope under the pillow, I picked up the backpack that I had packed, consisting of herbs, ash, crystals, and candles. I needed to head to the graveyard. The energy there would be best for this spell. I backpacked and grabbed my shoulder suitcase, about to step out when I wondered if Rayhan was lingering around. Maybe I should go out through the bathroom window. He wouldn't think of that. Going to the bathroom, I looked at the tiny window. My small suitcase would only fit if the entire window was removed. I frowned in determination, closing the toilet lid. I stood on it as I got to work. Another 20 minutes later, I was sweating and my arms ached, but I had managed to remove the frame. I lifted my suitcase and pushed it out of the window before climbing out myself. I looked around, before I stuck to the shadows, pulling my jacket hood up to hide my hair, and hurried into the darkness. First stop, the graveyard. Then I will catch the train at the crack of dawn, and I'll be out of here. I was tired of running, tired of these shackles on my powers. Tired of my life being planned for me, and above all I couldn't handle him. The look in his eyes, that killer smile, the way he made goosebumps rise on my skin. I hated his kind and that was never going to change. It was pouring down and I was shivering by the time I got to the graveyard. I quickly took my candles out and the knife that I was going to use. I got to work, whispering a spell to still the wind a little around me before I set the candles in position. I sliced my finger deeply and began drawing the symbols in the dirt with my blood. Once I was done, I lit the candles and took a deep breath. All I knew was what the warden had taught me when he had bought me from my father, and even then, the spells back then had gone terrifyingly wrong. Just thinking back to it made me shudder. No time to doubt yourself, Del. I began chanting the spell, my hands held out palm upwards as I continued to chant the spell. Focusing my mind on summoning Andorra, she was the only witch I knew by name. I knew I only had one chance at this. Whispering surrounded me and I felt the pull from within. I wasn't strong enough to do this spell. Keep going, Del. I chanted louder. A vicious wind began swirling around me and the candles burning bright. The blood that drew the symbols on the floor now glittered as it rippled. My hair defying gravity, my eyes burning with pain and power as I fueled everything I could into this spell. Well, 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 a whispering voice came. Andorra. I had done it. The shadows swirled within the circle I had made. As long as I maintained it, she couldn't escape. Tell me how to unseal my powers. I shouted. Blood trickled down my nose, the strong coppery taste bitter in my mouth. I knew I was using more than I had. And why would I do that? If you were by my side, I would have succeeded. She spat. Answer me, I summoned you. You know the rule, Andorra. You have to answer if summoned. I shouted. My heart was beating scarily fast. Sure, those were the rules, but a witch as strong as Andorra could defy me, and it seemed that was her plan. What will I get in return? Resurrect me, Dulsanra, and I give you my word that you can walk free. Lies? No. I said, holding back a scream of pain. Answer me, Andorra. I've summoned you, seek. Upon one condition then. Kill my sons, and I will give you the answers you. Her voice held finality, and I knew she wouldn't budge. Was that the price for my freedom? To kill 3. You have my word. Kill them and you are free. I screamed as pain erupted within me and I felt something wrap around me. Her chilling laugh consumed me. With all my willpower I scraped my foot over the edge of the circle, breaking the spell. I clutched my chest, falling forward. I had failed. I wouldn't be able to live knowing I killed for my freedom. Maybe I was better off dead. Her sons. The Leaken King. Rayhan's father. I couldn't do that to him. I fell face forward on the ground, my heartbeat dimming. Was this it? I wasn't sure. My eyes fluttered shut and I thought I saw something black move towards me. But it was all fading into darkness. Rayhan, I had never felt more terrified or hopeless in my life than I did when I saw her lying there in the rain, her hand covered in Thad. Felt something was up as I sat in the downpour watching her apartment from afar. I thought I heard something, but there was nothing when I went to check. When I finally made a round around her apartment, I saw the bathroom window and then realized she had left. I followed her faint scent in this rainfall and it led me to the graveyard. The sight before me had ripped me up. I had picked her up and fushed her to the penthouse. I pushed the door open, making the others jump from the sofa. Whoa! What? Chris exclaimed in alarm. She was out in the rain. I said, my voice coming out thick. We need to get her out of those clothes. Lola said quickly. I nodded as I carried her to my room, placing her down and about to remove her jacket when I remembered the memory. I moved back suddenly, my heart thudding. She wouldn't like me touching her. Get her changed, showered, and into warm clothes. I'll call a doctor. I said, turning and walking out of the room. My wolf's anger and worry were crippling me, but I knew what he wanted to do. To mark her, knowing once we did, it would strengthen her, but I was not going to do that. No chance. She's going to be okay. Chris said, running a hand through his hair. She looks like a little spitfire. She'll be fine. I agreed. Arrange for a doctor, Chris. He nodded and walked off to grab his phone. Ray, she's covered in I know. I cut Lola off coldly through the link. Okay. Her understanding reply came. I knew she meant her scars, I didn't even want to know the extent of them. I dropped to the ground, resting my head against the wall and tapping my foot. Impatiently. Look, you need to get out of those wet clothes too. Chris said quietly when he came back. I have a doctor coming to see her soon. She's human. Maybe the hospital would have been better. I shook my head. No, there was a chance more witches were after her. I couldn't risk it. I waited anxiously for the girls to be done. The urge to be by her side was strong. I stood up suddenly, unable to hold myself back, and entered the bedroom. Lola was wrapping her hand in a bandage. She wore one of my t-shirts that reached her thighs whilst Rose was toweling her washed hair. The smell of my bath products was mixed with her scent. I walked to the bed, looking at her pale face. Her hand is bleeding quite badly, Lola said. Her temperature's high, I think she's caught a fever, but her breathing seems a bit better. I nodded and was about to sit down when she raised her hand. Go shower first, you're going to get her cold again, she said quietly. She was right. I looked at Dulsanra, my stomach twisting at how pale she looked. What spell had she been performing? Did it go wrong? Lola covered her with the blanket, as Chris knocked on the door lightly. Mind if I step in? Yeah, and wait for the doctor, I need to step out, I said suddenly. They didn't ask me where I was going, but a sudden thought had come to me. Her bags and the remnants of the spell remained in the graveyard. I needed to get rid of her evidence in case she was tracked down. Half an hour later, I was back. I had taken the car this time. Whatever spell she had been performing was long since washed away, but something told me it had been dark magic. I left her bag of witchy things in the trunk of my car and took her suitcase inside. The doctor was checking her over when I entered and told us what to keep an eye out for. If she gets worse, take her to the emergency department at the hospital, he said, passing Lola a note. Thank you, doctor, Rose said. I placed the luggage down before walking to the bathroom to shower. The image of her on the ground. Her pinned to the wall as those bastards hurt her. I punched the wall in anger, not caring about the crack in the tiles. How do I take that all away from her? The bitter truth that I would never be able to consumed me like a heavy weight, suffocating me. I could never remove her past. That was the harsh reality. I had grown up with everything I desired, caring parents, every luxury imaginable, friends. How could I possibly comprehend what she had gone through? There was only one person I knew who had a similar past. Maybe not the same, but someone who has been abused too. Auntie Red, should I talk directly to her? Or to Uncle L? But he'd just grill me on Liam or tell Dad. I needed to do the right thing, and it was a delicate matter. I couldn't forget that she hated our kind. I washed quickly, finishing with conditioner on my hair before I stepped out and toweled myself dry, then wrapping it around my waist. Re-entering the bedroom, I went to the wardrobe and picked out some boxers and joggers. I put my boxers on and removed my towel. Her breathing is better. I've made a thermos of hot tea. Rose began. Coffee, she likes coffee, I said quietly. I don't know why it was important, but it was. I put my jogging bottoms on and walked over to the bed. I'll make coffee then, Rose said with a gentle smile. Thanks, guys, I said quietly. Chris was leaning against the wall as he looked at her. What's the plan? He asked as Rose left the room. I don't know, I said, sitting on the bed near her head. The glow from the now dimmed lights made her look as if she was simply sleeping peacefully. Is there something you want to share? There's more to Anna than you're telling us, right? Chris asked. I looked at him. Obviously, my best friends would pick that up. I didn't say anything, Lola said quietly through the link. You know, I have my assumptions, but unless you want to tell me, I won't ask. This is why I loved her, she understood me. It wasn't my place to tell them about Dulsanra's past, but her history with wolves and the fact that she was a witch, was something I needed to tell them. When it came out later, I didn't want Dulsanra to think I was hiding it because I was ashamed. I ran my fingers through her hair gently as if she would break, my heart squeezing as she twitched at my touch. You holding her might help her, Chris said. I didn't want to scare her. I took her hand, holding it to my lips. I wanted to hold her forever, but, if she woke up and saw me holding her, I was not going to do anything without her permission. She's been through a lot, she needs time. I said quietly. You know, we're here for you, Ray. Chris replied, sitting down on the sofa. I could see that, just from the fact that it was past midnight and they were here with me. I sighed heavily. Do you guys remember that witch we tracked years back before the Battle of Hecate's betrayal? Dulsanra. I asked them quietly. The door opened again, Rose walked in with a thermos and 4 mugs of hot drinks. Aw thanks, baby, Lola said, appreciatively leaning over and taking a mug. Yeah, I remember her, Chris replied frowning deeply. Say we didn't find her. What do you think would have happened? I asked, picking up my mug. We all had our favorite drinks, Lola's being hot chocolate with cream, Chris was a caramel latte, Rose's was green tea and I loved my milky coffee. I glanced at Dulsanra. She was another coffee lover like me. What would have happened if you guys hadn't found Dulsanra? Rose repeated, sitting down on the ground between Lola's legs. We would have been trapped. Chris said. The king and queen wouldn't have managed to kill that him without sacrificing themselves in the process. Something about his words gave me hope. It was his reaction that I was scared about. She was another victim of Endora's. I said quietly. Lola looked at Dulsanra, then at me. I think she was making the link but I wasn't sure. It's her, I said quietly, looking down at my sleeping princess. The room fell silent as everyone tried to make sense of my words. All eyes were trained upon her. She's her, meaning. Chris was the first to speak. The witch, as in Dulsanra? Didn't she die? Rose asked, surprised. Yeah, it's Dulsanra. That's probably why her jumping to her death hit me hard, because she's my mate. I said quietly, it felt so fragile and delicate in my own. Whoa, so she's a witch? Chris said, looking stunned, as if he still couldn't comprehend it. I looked at him, waiting for his reaction. Would he be okay, or? She isn't Endora, and from what we saw, she's been treated horribly. Rose whispered, looking up at Lola, who kissed the top of her head. The look they exchanged made me wonder just how bad it was. Even werewolves have treated her like shit. I said, my eyes flashing at the memory I had seen. So that's why she hates us. He got up, walking over to me. You didn't tell us because of me, right? Chris said. I looked up at him. Well, what could I expect? He knew me well enough. You lost your parents, and I know how you feel about witches. I said quietly. That's like saying all werewolves are bad. We both know there's a handful of us who are evil. I don't like witches, but we have to remember that she helped us, and foremost, she's your mate. That's enough for me, brother. He said, placing his hand on my shoulder. Now I remember why I put up with all your crap. I said with a small smirk. I felt beyond relieved with his acceptance. I knew it wasn't easy for him to play this off, but he was being positive for me. You don't really have a choice, I'm just so lovable. He said with an arrogant smirk, picking up his mug. I scoffed as Lola snorted. Ha, yeah right. I swear, I feel for your mate, she remarked. Well, as you can see, I haven't found her and I'm not sure I want to. He said. Maybe I'll be blessed with a few mates. Now that would be fun. Oh, you are horrible. Rose said, wrinkling her nose. What's wrong with a few mates? Chris protested. I drank my coffee, placing my mug back down, not once letting go of Dulsanra's hand. We should go. Let us know if you need anything, babe. Rose said. What? Do none of you like the idea of me having a harem of mates? No, we don't. You can't even cope with the women you usually bring. How will you handle a harem of mates you'll be stuck with for life? Lola asked as she finished her drink and picked up the tray. Well, they will all be soft, gentle, women who will serve the deadly auras that filled the air made me look up sharply. Oh, he sure asked for it. Lola and Rose were both staring murderously at him, and even Chris gulped. Look, ladies. I didn't mean now. Lola lunged at him, dropping the tray that, luckily, a glowering Rose caught. He dived, rushing for the door, banging his shoulder in the process as he ran for his life. Serves him right. The door shut with an ominous thud and I had a feeling Chris was going to pay for that comment. I smirked, shaking my head as I looked back down at Dulsanra. Wake up, kitten, I'm sure you'll learn to love my friends, to see that we're not all as bad as you think. I kissed her hand once more before I decided to put a shirt on. I didn't want her to wake up and get upset. I sat down on the bed again, taking hold of her hand once more, resting it against my chest, and turning off the lamp as I leaned against the headboard, half sitting. I stroked her hair, hoping she felt better soon. Dulsanra, the pain was gone. I felt at ease. Warmth enveloped me and I was at peace. I had never felt so comforted in my life. Was this it? Did I die? My stomach fluttered as I tried to move my heavy eyelids to see where I was. I frowned, cracking them open a little, with the sudden rush, the splitting headache, the pain in my body and bones screamed loudly hit. I flinched. I definitely was not dead. Trying to reach for my head, I realized it was trapped. I opened my eyes and the first thing I saw was the six-pack of a Greek god peeking out from a t-shirt that had ridden up. My heart thundered as I took in the situation. I was all warm and cocooned in the blanket whilst Rayhan was sitting on top of it asleep. His head was resting against the headboard, his shoulder-length black soft curls falling in front of his face. One of his hands was resting on my head, the other was holding one of my hands captive against his chest. His chest rising and falling steadily, his muscles stretching against the fabric of the t-shirt. He was even more perfect up close than he was from afar. A dull ache throbbed within me, as I yanked my hand away. Everything from last night rushed back. How did I get here? I jolted up, realizing I was wearing an oversized shirt. His shirt. His eyes opened, he looked at me before looking down at himself and getting off the bed. Had he followed me to the graveyard? Obviously. Why am I here? You were out cold, I didn't want you to get ill. His voice was thick with sleep, making my heart skip a beat. I couldn't deal with this. It didn't matter if I got ill. I said, wincing at how croaky my voice came out. My entire throat was parched. I'll get you something to drink, he said, moving away from the bed and going to the door, exiting swiftly. I frowned. He was acting as if I was something that was about to go off. A sliver of guilt filled me. He had every right to act like that. I constantly told him I didn't want him anywhere near me. After showing him that memory, I had hoped he understood. But did understanding mean letting me leave? No. He seemed to have understood I needed space, but he wasn't backing off. I sighed deeply, looking around the large room. It was what dreams were made of. Everything in it was like one of those billionaire fantasies. The floor was plush carpet that I itched to walk on. On top of the carpet was a silk shimmering teal rug. The walls were painted a soft beige and the ceiling was covered in spotlights. There was a huge TV on the far wall and a wall of wardrobes. The bed itself was large enough to hold several people. The covers were made of a deep teal rich Egyptian cotton. I ran my fingers along the pattern. I'd never experience this luxury again. My first and last time. What would it feel like to sleep in this bed every day? To watch TV and eat lots and lots? Heavenly. The only nightmare in this fantasy was the werewolf alpha, in the form of a sizzling, handsome male. I shuddered at the thought of coming back to reality with a brutal slap. I pushed the blanket off, looking down at the large t-shirt. I couldn't stop myself from wondering if he had changed me. My cheeks burned at the thought, but then again, I was disgusting. If he didn't think that first, he'd surely think that after seeing me. Did it repulse him? I wrapped my arms around myself, feeling extremely self-conscious. I didn't care either way. What do I do now? I looked towards the large window, realizing we were high up. Great, there was no way for me to leave either. Would he kindly let me go if I asked? I got off the bed, groaning at the pain in my body. My vision spun slightly, and I placed a hand to my head. I wasn't well at all. Just great. I spotted my dirty, muddy suitcase standing in the corner, realizing he must have brought it. It had left a stain on the carpet too. I walked over to it, my legs feeling so much heavier than normal, dropping to my knees as I gingerly opened the suitcase, glad it was waterproof and everything inside was dry. I wasn't wearing anything but this shirt. I took out some panties and leggings, then put them on quickly. When the door opened, and I quickly hid behind. Sips, his eyes ran over me, and I saw a hint of a smile on his lips. I frowned. What are you smirking at? Nothing at all, glad to see you up. He replied with one of those deadly smiles. I noticed the tray in his hand held some toast, some pastries, a mug of steaming coffee, and a glass of juice. I wonder how he got toast so quickly. The smell alone was making my stomach rumble. He walked over to the bed, and even the way he walked with a swagger showed he was an alpha male. The aura that surrounded him, his pride, and his strength emanating from him were clear when you paid attention. My eyes fell on his back. He was muscular yet lean, his waist was narrow and I looked away quickly, seriously. Even though he was a werewolf, he was extremely handsome. But still, I shouldn't be staring at him. I quickly stood up straight. Want to eat? You'll feel better and you need to keep your energy levels up, he said, turning to look at me. Those gorgeous eyes of his met my blue ones. Despite how I felt, I still didn't know why I listened. I walked to the bed and sat down gingerly. He picked up the tray and placed it on the bed. Reaching out, he brushed my hair back, making me tense despite my heartbeat quickening. Sorry, he said, retracting his hand quickly and moving away, taking a seat on the edge of the bed. I looked at the tray. The variety of pastries smelled heavenly, I could tell it was all fresh. There was a cinnamon bun, a maple pecan pie, a croissant, a donut, and a yum-yum. My mouth watered at the sight, although I was feeling horrible and my throat was aching. All this food before me was unbelievable. Even at the diner, if we were ever given the morning pastries, which was a rarity in itself, it would be in the evening. It wouldn't be this fresh and it never looked this good either. You know. I don't know about you, but we usually need to put the food into our mouths to eat it. Unless it's a witch's talent to eat things with their eyes. He said with a small smile. If that was the case, I would eat him. I frowned and reached for a toast when I realized with a sudden wave of emotion that it was the first time someone had brought me food. The first time someone was concerned about my health. I bit the toast trying not to let the emotions take over, keeping my head down, but the bread suddenly felt hard to swallow. I looked up at him, trying to think of something else. Why did you bring me here, when I told you I didn't want to see you again? I asked. Because I need you. He said softly. I know you hate my kind, and I don't blame you, not one bit. Because I need you. Those words echoed in my mind. His jaw clenched, his eyes flashing in anger, and I wondered if it was really because of those memories. I rejected you. Shouldn't that have ended it? I didn't accept it. He said tersely. Regardless of the bond, I still want to get to know you. If not as a mate, can we at least be friends? You and I are so different that being friends isn't possible. I picked up the coffee and took a gulp before placing my mug down again. Ever heard of opposites attract? Ever heard of stop being so pushy? Just now, and it just made me want to keep at it. He said, leaning forward. My stomach fluttered, that spark in his eyes throwing me off. I quickly looked away, finishing my toast before looking at those pastries. Would it be greedy to have all of them? I licked my lips. I'll start with the cinnamon bun. I picked it up and took a bite, doing my best not to moan out loud. Oh, it tasted so good. I ate it rather fast, licking my fingers before I took a gulp of the juice. Oh! Freshly squeezed. I reached for the maple pecan pie, taking a big bite of the yummy goodness when I heard a soft chuckle and froze, the pie still in my mouth. I frowned deeply. What is it? If you didn't want me to eat it all, then don't offer me it. Don't worry, I will pay for your hospitality, I said, swallowing my mouth full. He shook his head, his curls moving in the process. Friends don't owe each other anything. Besides, I'm not laughing at that, I was just surprised that something as tiny as you can eat so quickly. My brows furrowed deeper. First of all, Mr. Dog, what has my size got to do with how fast I eat? There's no logic in that. Besides, have you ever seen a rat or a mouse eat? They eat super fast, nothing to do with their size. Secondly, we are not friends, I stated, smoothly picking up another treat without looking at the plate. Hoping he didn't realize. His smile only grew. I had to admit, it was breathtaking. How could a man be so beautiful? Was that even a correct term for a male? Why are you showing those white teeth for? Wait, is that why you're feeding me? To fatten me up so you can eat me, like the wolf does in Little Red Riding Hood? I asked suspiciously, taking a big bite of the donut I had just picked up sneakily. Well, I knew that wasn't the case, but I really didn't want him teasing me about the pastries. His smile changed into a devilish smirk, and I felt something throb deep within me. Oh kitten, I'd only eat you if you want me to. He winked at me. I felt my cheeks burn. I may not be the most active person, but I knew what that meant. I frowned to cover my blush as he stood up. Enjoy your food. I just found a way to my little kitten's heart, and I intend to win it completely. I was about to ask what he meant, but my mouth was too full to speak. He walked out, closing the door behind him, leaving me alone with the entire tray of food. I swallowed slowly. What did he mean by a way to my heart? There was nothing inside me to win, the hatred I felt would never lessen. A familiar coldness washed over me and the excitement I felt moments earlier was gone. I ate my donut slowly, my memory going back to what Endora had said. Kill her sons, the Rossi brothers. I had seen one of them, the rogue Alpha, from afar. Then there was the Leakin King and the third. Who was he? How was Rayhan related to them? He wasn't the Leakin's son because he had only found his mate a few years ago. Then was he possibly Endora's third son's son? Why did I care? It wasn't like I'll be agreeing to her offer. I frowned. Endora could possibly be Rayhan's grandmother, which made him somewhat have some witch genes in him. Interesting. A light knock on the door made me look up and it opened to reveal the two pretty girls from the diner. I wondered who they were to Rayhan. Mind if we come in? The taller brunette asked. I just shook my head. There was nothing I could say, they outnumbered me greatly. I'm Lola and this is Rose, my mate. The brunette said. Nice. I didn't know what else to say. Mind if we sit down, babe? Rose the blonde asked. I shook my head, picking up the yum-yum. The delicious icing sugar-coated pastry was tastier than I ever imagined. I had one once, but that was from a supermarket in the thrown-out garbage that I had found in the bins. This one was so much better. Oh my, I think these might be my new favorites. If I ever get the chance to eat another one again, that is. How are you feeling? Is it okay if I check your hand once you've eaten? Lola asked. My hand. It didn't hurt much anymore. It's fine, thanks though. I replied. I didn't have too much experience with she-wolves, I just knew that their male counterparts were monsters. We were the ones who changed you, just in case you think it was Rayhan. He told us to. Rose said, giving me a small smile. That did make me feel a lot better. So, he told them to? That was considerate. My heart skipped a beat and I picked up my coffee, sipping it. So how old are you? Lola asked. 19. Nice. I'm 20, Lola is 23. Rayhan is 21 and Chris is 24. Rose said. Chris? Was he the other man with them? He might be the oldest, but he's a misogynistic pig. Lola glowered. Weren't they friends? I stared at the look of amusement on Rose's face. You know, half the time he does it just to annoy us and other times it's his lack of brain cells. She said, kissing Lola's hand. For a moment, I almost forgot that they were werewolves. They just looked like a normal young couple having a conversation. A dark memory returned. I shivered, pushing it away. They both looked at me. Are you cold? Lola asked. No, I'm fine. I said, looking at the croissant. My stomach was full, but I couldn't let it go to waste. Eat it. Rose said, with a small smile. I shook my head, I've eaten enough, it was the truth. My tummy was hurting now. Do you want to watch a movie or something while you rest? Rose asked. I didn't miss her exchanging looks with Lola. I guess I was being antisocial, but I didn't really trust them. When can I leave? I asked suddenly. They both tensely looked at me. When you're better, Lola said. She was lying, I could sense that much. Tell your alpha, I am leaving soon. I stated, crossing my arms. Rose giggled. Now there she is. Rayhan said you were a feisty thing, but I didn't believe it. Well, you shouldn't believe everything he says, besides he doesn't know me well enough to make a statement like that. I said, frowning. Lola smirked. I think he wasn't wrong. Does talking about him annoy you? Is it because he's handsome? She teased. I felt an odd pang of something inside, and I frowned. He's far from handsome. I tossed my hair. Yes, extremely godlike. Handsome didn't cut it. Wait, what am I thinking? I'm sure. Lola smirked, and Rose gave her a look. Anyway, get some rest. I hope you know that we might be different species, but we won't forget what you did for our kind Dulsanra. If it wasn't for you, many more of our loved ones would have died. Thank you. Thank you? Would they thank me if they knew that I had given Endora the answers to a lot of her spells? That I contacted the witches of the past and sought the answers she wanted? No, they wouldn't. I didn't want to tell her what she wanted, but she'd torture me until I screamed out all I knew. I had been weak, but I still was. I frowned. Should I just tell Rayhan that? If it wasn't for me, Endora would never have been as strong as she was? Then would he let me go, accept my rejection, or maybe he'd kill me? There was only one way to find out. I was going to tell him. Rayhan, I smirked as I looked at the menu of a restaurant nearby. What are you doing, oh mighty Alpha? Chris said, slumping onto the couch opposite. I raised an eyebrow at him. Lola had done a number on him. His cheek was still bruised, although it was fading. It meant she had broken something bad for it not to be healed until now. Well, he deserved it. This mighty Alpha has found the way to his kitten's heart. I said. Oh. Chris said, now curiously leaning forward. Diamonds, pink stuff, wait I know, shopping. Okay, I loved the dude, but he was really going to get killed by Lola. You know, there's a lot more to women than materialistic stuff. Don't let Lola hear you being a prick again. I advised. I know, but what is it? I really don't get women. Really? I would never have guessed. I remarked. All right then, tell me what's the way to our Luna's heart? Food. I smirked confidently. I had seen how she had looked at the tray. If only she'd look at me like that. I almost pouted at that. But I had to be realistic. As much as I wanted to go alpha mode and claim her as mine, she didn't deserve that. Nor was it the right way. She was like a cracked ornament made of glass, one that might break if I handled her roughly. Shame your appeal isn't working. You know, I know my food better than you do. Give me the phone, let me order some good food. Chris took my phone and I let him, lost in thought. I couldn't leave her alone, and Mom kept texting to ask when I was returning. Liam had gone on to some extra training. I knew he was just avoiding going home, but I was meant to go back. That was the plan. I had told Mom that too. But now I needed to think of everything. I couldn't keep Chris here either, as dumb as he could be. He was an excellent Delta and it was his job, something he needed to return to. Lola and Rose would have to go back at some point. But I couldn't go, not until I had won her over. I needed to make sure she trusted me because I knew back home that not everyone would be ready to accept her, and that would be another hurdle. Sizzling lamb chops, grilled chicken tikka, steak fries with peri spice. Oh, and we can't forget the spicy rice. Maybe some pita in Chris. I cut him off, frowning thoughtfully. Yeah? He asked, now seriously, as he carried on adding items to the basket. You and the girls will need to head back, but I need to tell Mum and Dad a reason I'm not coming back. I'm not ready to tell them about her yet. I said. He frowned. Say you've gone for the extra training, I can set up a fake email and make it look official enough. If your dad wants proof. I mean, ask Liam for the form and I'll just edit it. And we can get Rose to break the news. She's a smart one and probably the smoothest of us three. Don't worry, Ray, do what you need to do here. I and those two Amazonians will have it all. He said confidently. Thanks. Rayhan is looking cute. He smirked, holding my phone up. I snatched it from him to see she had tagged me in her social media post, and she was just pouting. Why did girls do that? 3 years had passed since I left, and each time I returned for the holidays I swear she was changing. I don't think it was a good thing. She looks more like a woman now than a girl. Don't call her cute, man. No, why not? I always did. Yet, she's an adult now, so. She's still our little princess. He said, snatching the phone before frowning. You're right, she's actually grown a lot, Chris. I growled. Just then, the girls came into the lounge area. Is he being a pig again? Lola asked. No. I was just saying, Rayhan has grown. Lola threw a cushion at him with all her strength, and he let out a complaintive moan. No fair, Lola, I was complimenting the alpha princess. You talking about women is banned. Lola growled, yanking his ear and making him howl in pain. It sucks to be Chris. On another note, she's sweet. Rose said to me, motioning to the bedroom as she tugged Lola away from Chris. Glad you can see that. I replied, with a smirk. Just thinking of her sitting there and eyeing the food made me smile. She really was a cute little kitten. Okay, lover boy, before getting ahead of yourself, you definitely need to do a lot of work. Lola remarked. Yeah, and I need you guys to head back one of these days. Are you sure she'll be okay to be here alone with you? Rose asked, uncertain. Yeah, because she already wants to leave. Lola added. My stomach twisted at that. I couldn't hold her here without her consent. I'll talk to her, I said, standing up. The girls hesitated but said nothing. I knew they were probably worried, but I wasn't a fool. I knocked on the bedroom door. Her scent hit me, making me close my eyes and inhale deeply before I opened it. She was sitting on the bed, her head resting on the headboard. She looked so small on that huge bed, but also just so beautiful, like a snowflake. She turned away from the window and her blue eyes met mine. Even though we were worlds apart, there was a connection. Her heart raced and I was sure it wasn't out of fear. She was my mate, and I wanted to do a lot more than see her. Okay. Get your head on straight. So, the girls said you want to leave. Is that something you even need to ask? I was leaving town, as you probably figured. I still intend to go. I get that, but hear me out. Why? So you can force me to stay. I won't force you to do anything, kitten, not unless you want me to. I just want to put forward my point of view. I said, taking a seat on the bed opposite her, our knees inches apart. It was the closest I could allow myself to her, hoping she didn't move away. It was hard to have your mate before you, with these strong emotions that were drawing me to her. There was no way I could explain the surge of emotions I felt when she was close. I looked down, my gaze falling to her legs that were folded under her. You have 2 minutes, she said, crossing her arms. Don't do that, kitten. I looked at the wall behind her head, trying not to look at her. I was becoming a pervert. Was it my fault that they seemed like the perfect size to grab completely? Clear your head, Rayhan. 1 minute and 40 seconds, oh. Okay, look. You're on the run, trying to stay safe, right? Well, how about instead of running, you stay here in this town? Go to work, or do whatever you want. I'll make sure no one finds you, but please, just give me 2 weeks. 2 weeks to prove that I'm not your enemy, Dulsanra. Her heart thudded as our eyes met. I saw the conflict in them. Why? Don't you realize that I placed a finger on her lips, making her take a sharp intake of breath? I know, seeing me is hard, right? I know. I'm sorry that I remind you of those bastards. I said, the pain of what I had witnessed still hurt so flipping much. I would be tracking them down and I will be killing them. She moved her head away, so I retracted my hand. At least this time she didn't wipe her lips in disgust. Just please give me this chance. She frowned and I sighed. Okay, how about this? In return, I'll treat you to food from all the best places to eat in the city. Every day. I said. Her frown faltered, and I saw her look down. I was right. My little kitty cat loved her food. I can buy my own food. I know you can. The thing is, us wolves love food, so I know all the best places. I know you like to stay low-key, but I can collect the food and bring it straight here. You can save your money for when you leave. Wait, here. She asked sharply. Yeah, you can have your own room here. Just so we can spend a little time together. You're a witch, so you can sense if I'm lying. You know I won't hurt you. I said softly, as I reached over and kissed her cheek. Her heart was pounding as she struggled to come to a decision, before she closed her eyes and took a deep breath, pushing my hand away. My gaze dipped to her lips, but it was the words she spoke that captured my attention. Fine, 2 weeks. If I don't change my opinion, you walk away. My heart raced at her words, but I knew it was all I had. I had to do this, to win her over in that time. You have yourself a deal, kitten. I held my hand out and she frowned before rolling her eyes and taking it. Sparks shot through us and our hearts beat as one. The strength of the bond surged through me. Her heart was thundering, but the emotions in her eyes were ones I couldn't make out. We both knew that these 2 weeks were going to be important, and I swear by Selene herself that I would show my kitten that there was so much more to life than running. That there was someone who would never let harm come to her and someone who wanted to give her every happiness that he could. I will prove to you, that you were meant to be mine. Dulsanra night had fallen, I had stayed in the room all day. I don't know why I agreed to his deal. With that look in his eyes, I had not been able to refuse him. He was messing with my mind already. I wish I could have just sneaked out, but I had given my word, and a witch always keeps her word. Although I often wondered why I should follow such rules in the first place, it was just something that was embedded deep within me. Rayhan and the 2 women had come to ask me about lunch and dinner, but I had pretended to be sleeping and said I wasn't hungry. Even when Rayhan brought dinner, I had just told him I was not well. Being around him messed with my head, I needed to avoid him at all costs. But now I was hungry, so I kicked off the bedsheet and sat up. It had been pretty warm. I had taken my leggings off earlier, now only wearing his shirt, something I hadn't been able to remove. I wasn't sure if it was the quality of the fabric that made me hold on to it or the faint scent that lingered. It was definitely the fabric. Yes, definitely. I mean, why would I want to wear a werewolf's clothes? No matter how good he smelled. Was it legal to smell that good? Shouldn't he smell like a wet dog? Ugh, I was getting off track again. I was feeling a lot better now, although I had a cold and I kept sneezing, but my body wasn't aching as much. What time is it anyway? I didn't have a phone, as I never had anyone to call, but surely there's a clock around here somewhere. After a quick look around, I failed to find a clock. I sighed and looked outside. It was definitely past midnight. Okay, maybe there was some food left. Rayhan had mentioned some really tasty dishes. But I didn't want to make this easier, so didn't even look at the tray. I just wanted him to let me go, but I had to remember that I was the one who agreed to stay. As I padded to the door, opening it silently, I popped my head out. The perks of such wealth were that there were no creaky floorboards or doors. I wonder how good their hearing was. From what I knew, their sense of smell and hearing was incredible. It was the first time I was venturing out of the bedroom. I looked around, admiring the large modern paintings along the wall, with overhead spotlights and a few ornaments placed around. The floor was wood and the path curved around to where I could see a huge fire blazing. My heart thumped as I wondered if someone was there. I crept forward, peering around the corner, but it was empty. Letting out a breath of relief, I carried on, turning a corner and smiling when I saw the black gloss kitchen with granite worktops. Perfect! Was there any food left? Spotting a tray with a plastic covering over it, I walked over to it, my stomach rumbling at the thought of food. I looked around before lifting the covering off. Underneath was another form of heaven. My heart thrummed as I devoured it with my eyes. Chops, rice, chicken, sautéed vegetables, steak fries. Oh my! On the side were a few small plastic tubs of sauces and a pot of salad with a small note. In case you get hungry, X. Along with a very terrible, okay, a cute picture of what looked like a little cat. I smile. That was sweet. I picked up the plate, hesitating. There was a microwave. I never had one and often ate food cold if I couldn't properly warm it in a pan. Would they wake up if I used it? I shouldn't get used to this anyway. It's not like I'll be around to have such luxuries for much longer. I'll just take this back to the bedroom. I placed it on the tray. Maybe I should grab some water and going somewhere, kitten. I gasped, jumping in alarm with my heart thrumming at a very fast speed. I turned to see him leaning against the fridge, shirtless in all his glory, his arms crossed over that perfect chest of his. I put my hand on my heart, glaring at him. How do you do that? I asked sharply. We witches were usually able to detect the presence of wolves nearby. But now that I think about it, how does he get so close without my noticing him? I'm just a talented tracker, stealth is my plus point. He winked at me, but I shook my head. No, I've always been able to pick up on any werewolf, and some were trackers. No one could get past me. Then again, even back when I was running from Endora and you approached me alone. I didn't sense you then either. I said, stepping away from him. I shouldn't have come to the kitchen. It was almost as if he knew I would come here. He may have looked all charming and made my body react to him, but beneath that gorgeous face was an animalistic beast that would attack if he wanted. He flashed me that killer smile of his, but I looked away. There it was again. Maybe because we're mates, he suggested, his deep, sultry tone holding a hint of amusement. I doubt it, I said, just the thought of us being mates was strange. I don't understand why you would even want that. Go find a she-wolf. Tell me, why wouldn't? I just needed to get this tray and get out of here. I ignored him. You need to heat that up. Are you sure you are okay with this? I could order something else. You shouldn't waste food. If he had grown up with nothing, he would understand that. Right, let's heat this up then. He took the plate and I frowned. I can eat cold food. Not under my watch. His tone was firm, and I glared at his shoulder blades as he placed the plate in the microwave. My gaze roamed the planes of his back. How could someone who looked so perfect ever want me to be a part of their life? You know, if you want a better look, I don't mind putting on a show for you, he remarked, turning and winking at me. I glared at him coldly. Don't get too confident. Remember, I don't like animals, especially dogs. Yeah, I'm not a dog, I'm a wolf. We're better. Look the same to me, I said, opening the fridge and staring at the rows of drink cans and bottles. The fridge was stocked with fresh fruit and vegetables, milk, eggs and anything else you could hope for. Would they manage to eat all this? Or was it just here for the sake of it? Grab me a tango, he said, taking my steaming plate out of the microwave. The delicious smell filled my senses and any thought of telling him to get his own drink went out the window. I got a Tango Orange for him and chose a can of Coca-Cola for myself before I closed the fridge, watching Rayhan already leaving the kitchen. Frowning, I followed him to the lounge area, where he placed the tray on the coffee table. I was going to eat in the bedroom. Sure, let's go then. I didn't want him in there, and I knew he wouldn't take a no. Never mind, here is fine, I mumbled, placing the cans down, freezing when I realized I was only wearing his top. I quickly moved back and sat down, pulling at the edge of the shirt to cover as much of my thighs as possible. His eyes were on me, his intense gaze burning into me. My heart pounded as I pressed my legs together, staring down at the. There were scars littering the surface. Although most of the damage was on my back, there wasn't much of me that wasn't marked or broken. Maybe if he saw these, he'd be put off the idea of having me as his mate. Maybe he'd find a gorgeous she-wolf. I stared into the flames, my heart thudding. Why did the idea of that send an odd sliver of irritation through me? Staring into the dancing sparks of fire, I took a deep breath, trying to calm the odd emotions that filled my otherwise dead heart. I had always been drawn to fire. I knew it was one of the strongest sources of my powers. But Endoram made me keep away from it. Probably because I could draw on its strength, Dulsanra? I blinked when Rayhan called me, a curious look in his eyes. I narrowed my eyes at him as I picked up the tray and placed it in my lap. Don't look at me like that. Have you never heard that curiosity kills the cat? Join our Facebook and WhatsApp group for more updates, link is given in description. Rest audiobook will be continued in next episode.